Oh, you're watching Strangers in Space. And for the next 90 minutes, we're going to be recording 3 audio episodes of the podcast. But I've decided, as they're all news blasts, that we'll put them whole out on video. And I guess it makes more sense just to do it as one video. Because let's be honest, everybody watching this feed will want the first bit first, and then they might be a bit interested in the second bit, and they probably really won't want to listen to or watch the third bit, but they'll have the choice to catch up on those bits on the audio version. So the order of play for this evening is going to be, we're going to record the audio episode of about half an hour of Doctor Who news, probably give or take. These are going to be about half an hour each. After which, we're going to talk for about half an hour about the Oscar nominations, which have just come in, despite the fact that we've just recorded a couple of episodes about some of the films that we thought were going to be nominated. And then after that, we're going to do about half an hour, give or take, on Trump's first week back in office. Oh, DJT.2, RTD.2. We'll start and finish with a .2. There was supposed to be 4 people on this call, or at one point there might be 4 people on this call. One of those people fell out about half an hour before we started recording. Another person fell out about quarter of an hour before we were due to start recording. I'm fully expecting John to drop out any minute now, and if he does, I'll just... Oh, bye, John. I'll just carry on by myself. Okay, now the explanation's out of the way. Let's get on, and we'll record the first bit, which will be, I don't know, about half an hour maybe, of some Doctor Who news and gossip. Here we go. You're listening to Strangers in Space, and for the next half an hour, we're going to be talking about Doctor Who, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
So there's just 2 of us. Oh, by the way, apologies for the audio quality if it doesn't come out very well. John's having some problems, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get rid of it, so if it's a bit buzzy, blame John.
Always. It's always my fault. Don't worry. It's fine.
Okay, fair enough. Right, there are rumours sort of crashing around the internet at the moment about something big that's going down in Cardiff pretty much as we speak, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So, first of all, I tell you what, let's start with the classic series, because everybody loves a bit of classic series gossip, right, don't they?
Oh, yes, I'm in.
Did you hear the stuff then earlier this week that was coming out from Annika Wills from the Happy Who Year last weekend?
Was it Smugglers related by any chance?
It was Smugglers related. Smugglers being the #1 story I would like to see repatriated to the archive, because I just think with all that location work in it, it's going to be lovely. Everybody was mad about the Enemy of the World. That's only got location stuff in the first episode. Imagine if all that location stuff was all 4 episodes.
Of course, in your neck of the woods as well.
I don't live in Cornwall, John. I'm not
close
that
enough. It's close enough.
It is close enough. Simon's from Cornwall. That's about as close as I'm ever going to get. So there's been a bit of rowback on this. Annika Wills has said now, oh no, I was only expressing a wish that they would animate the smugglers, or that they'd find and colour the smugglers, or whatever. But what she actually said was, because I think the question that was asked was something along the lines of, if you could go back and redo one of your stories, which one would it be? Something along those lines. And it wasn't a probing question that was meant to tease out any information, and it wasn't anything about any sort of serious indication of something that might be on the cards. And the other sort of people on the panel just sort of came up with an idea about a story that they, because I think the question was about which one did you think maybe didn't come out as well as you wanted it to. And the idea was that you'd say, oh, I didn't think X story was terrifically good. We could redo that one. Instead of saying I didn't think X story was very good, Annika Wills pipes up, well, she says, and she suddenly starts banging on about going back to Cornwall. And during the course of what she said about going back to Cornwall, she made it abundantly clear that she had recently been back to Cornwall with a couple of other people who were involved in the production of The Smugglers, and that we should all, she said, watch this space for news about something to do with Cornwall. Although, she said, I'm not supposed to say this. I've been told off for saying this before, and I've been told not to say it again, but bugger them. They can't stop me. I'm here in front of a live audience, and I'm going to say it if I want to. So, frankly, no amount of rowing back is going to change the fact that she pretty much said outright that they've been down in Cornwall filming some kind of making-of featurette for an animated Smugglers Blu-ray.
Yes, that's the impression I got straight off it. So it's Toby Hadoke had been obviously as well, which is...
Yeah, and I think she gave the impression that maybe there was somebody else as well, maybe somebody else from the production or something, although I'm not sure who that could be. I wonder if there's any surviving members of the guest cast or something like that.
Yeah, there's no... Obviously, the other regular's gone. George A. Cooper is gone. He's the only one I can remember off the top of my head. There's got to be someone else left. Sure.
Yeah, maybe it was just her and Toby, but either way, something happened. And of course, she lives in Devon anyway, so it's not as far for her to go. So there you go. That's a little bit of Smugglers gossip and our feelings about it. Now, before we talk about the thing that we came here to talk about, it's also been said that Russell T Davies is going to reveal the writers for the next series of Doctor Who in the next edition of Doctor Who magazine, which is out this coming Thursday as we speak. Wednesday.
Yes.
Get it on Wednesday. And I've seen that actually episode 5, which is the Nigerian one, the one that they think is set in Nigeria, is actually, and it's directed by Michaela McPherson, and it's reportedly written by Inua Elams, or Elams, I don't know how you say it, rather than who we thought, which was Kate Herron and Bryony Redman. Actually, if that's right, because RTD has said 4 guest writers, hasn't he, rather than 5?
Yes, because he would do the opening one, wouldn't he? Or probably opening.
He'd do the opening 2, and he'd do the last 2. And the way we had it when we talked about it the other week was that there were 4 episodes with guest writers, but one of those was Kate Herron and Bryony Redman again, which would mean that there would be 5 guest writers overall. I wonder if the Kate Herron and Bryony Redman thing was a mistake, and actually it's this Inua Elams or Elams. And so, therefore, the sort of number of writers altogether is RTD plus 4 rather than RTD plus 5, as he said a few months ago in Doctor Who magazine in the production notes too.
It'd be interesting because I've read one of the newer Ellen's. I think it's a play, and I think it was an extended poem in prose as well. Half God of Rain. So that would certainly, I think, fit in with the idea that it's set in Nigeria or dealing with Nigerian heritage work. So
that fits.
That fits. I think so. So that would be Thursday. That makes sense. Yeah, it's about the right time they usually reveal the writers. Unless it's the Jubilee, in which case they wouldn't tell us till it goes out on air, obviously.
I don't know. So, okay, yeah. All right. Just on that, though, the news that came out during the Jubilee era was never as bad as people said it was. There was a shed load of promotion at the start. They did give us tidbits every now and again. And to be honest, I quite like the idea of not really... I either want to know as soon as they know, or else I don't want to know until the last possible minute. This sort of...
There was something on one of the book podcasts. It was probably Kenny Smith's. That I think Steve Cole said they only got one script to work off when they were doing the Jodie books. They were keeping stuff spin-off people. So.
Oh no, that's good. I like that. I think that's the right way to do it.
I don't know though. If you're writing a spin-off, you need something to go off so the characters are recognisable, not just off the first script where your characters may not be settled yet in terms of the writing or how the performances go. They've just got script. They haven't seen that even performance, even a rush.
For the first script, and we're talking about The Woman Who Fell to Earth, right? Absolutely. I think that's basically giving you as much as you would really need about the companion characters.
Probably, but I think one or two would help just to give direction.
I think the point I'm really
Yeah.
making, though, is everybody bangs on about how secretive they were during the Chibnall era and about how open RTD is now. And yet, here's RTD. This series has been in the can for a year. They wrote the episodes for this series 2 years to 18 months ago. And this week, 2 years after RTD gave out contracts for all these things, we're finally going to find out who's written the episodes just a few weeks before they get presumably due to be broadcast. He's not any better than Chibnall for this, frankly.
There's no right answer to it, is there?
No.
If it works, it works.
Well, precisely so. Right, let's talk about the thing that we came here to talk about, which is, and I don't know if there's much to be said about this, so I suppose we'll spin the conversation off into other areas. But there's been a lot of rumours around this week that, despite the fact that Series 2 been in the can for something like a year, and it's probably been, special effects and grading and everything, and the music and everything, it's probably been locked off for months, probably. Certainly, it's been locked off for a while. Well, this week we hear rumor that they've unlocked one of the episodes so that they can change things about a bit. And the episode that they've unlocked is episode 8, the final episode of Series 2. And the reason they've unlocked it is so that they can stick a regeneration in at the end. Because apparently Shooty Gatwa has decided he's had enough and he's walking away.
Is this because his contract is time limited rather than limited by how
I don't think so.
to do?
I don't think so. The way contracts work is you get a contract for a year, everybody gets their opportunity to either say yes or no to extensions to that year. The way I've heard it overall is that Shooty Gatwa had a 1-year contract. No, actually, I think they started with 2-year contracts this time, didn't they? Or 2-season contracts, because they didn't make them as close together as people seem to think, but they made them relatively close together one after another with a break of a few weeks in between. So they did break like they always do. So either it was a 1-year extension that they quickly extended, a 1-year contract that they quickly extended to 2, or it was a 2-year contract. And the extension to a 3rd series, I had heard that Shooty Gatwa had initially said yes to that. And so the idea was that they broke off for, I don't know, 6 or 9 months. He was going to go on the stage and do The Importance of Being Earnest, and then he would go back to Cardiff and go back into Doctor Who. Do you know when The Importance of Being Earnest finishes its run, or has it finished already?
Is it? It's around now, isn't it? It's either at the end of I think it's the end of this month.
I think Russell T Davies was given the impression that the writing for Series 3 basically already underway, if not completed, and that they were going to get into sort of pre-production during the latter half of last year, sort of maybe the last 3 months, the latter quarter perhaps, and that they'd go into production. Initially, he was talking about, I'm sure, or hinting at, that they'd go into production early in 2025, maybe February, that kind of fits. And then when the sort of Disney thing that Disney weren't going to make a decision until after Series 2 was broadcast came out, then it looks like the production part of that, and presumably the pre-production part of that, got pushed back until such time as they get an answer from Disney, which looked like it might come in the spring, depending on when these episodes go out, I suppose. If the rumor that Shooty Gatwa is turning his back after 2 series, and after all, if they're unlocking the episode to film a regeneration, plus some stuff to build up to a regeneration. So, I mean, we had substantial reshoots. I don't think substantial is probably quite what it is. It's probably a couple of other scenes or a couple of things that they can stick in elsewhere in the episode in order to sort of facilitate such a regeneration. If they've decided to add that after the episode was locked for him to continue, that looks like a change of mind. And if there's been a change of mind, then that says to me there's been a change of circumstance. And if there's been a change of circumstance, when we kind of knew what we were expecting to happen, and that's already changed once, that makes me think it's probably changed again. And what's happened is Shooty Gatwa is getting pissed off with being messed around. When he's young, He's on the verge of massive, massive success. And this is the point at which you want to stop messing around and get stuff done. So if he's been told, right, we're starting Doctor Who in February. No, it's not February. Maybe it'll be April. No, might not even be April. Maybe it'll be August. He's probably just going to say, look, I've had enough of this. February or late January, February, we can film the final bit. I'll be gone. You can get somebody else in. You know, that's what it sounds like to me. Doesn't want to be messed around at this stage in his career.
It could be. It could simply be a schedule thing. If he has something reasonably big lined up for later in the year, when he was thinking, he's doing what's being earnest, do Doctor Who, and he has something lined up, then he just goes, look, this is going to give me the bigger exposure. This is what I want to do. This is what I've got to do. It's going to be better for my career.
Or it could just be that it's the project that he was moving on to after he finished Doctor Who. Let's say he was going to be doing February till October, and then November he was due to start filming something else. And like you say, maybe if they've said to him now, no, we're not going to start till August, he's like, well, scheduling conflict. You'll just have to write me out. Could be that. And
I mean, it's fairly standard by general accent that doctors tend to do 3 seasons anyway. If they're cast, with exceptions such as the Tennant mini-season.
But yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Of late, the last 4 Doctors have all done 3 seasons across 4 years.
Yeah, so it would just mean that he would maybe be thinking 3 seasons and out, particularly if they filmed 2 seasons back to back.
Well, and presumably RTD, everybody might have been thinking to themselves 3 seasons and out, or potentially, and this is how I'm sure I've heard somebody say they thought this was due to be it. 2 and a break and 2 and out.
Yes, that would make sense, particularly if it's 2 production blocks.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. A sort of extended production block of 2 series, a break, an extended production block of 2 more.
That would account for 2, 3, basically 3 seasons, and the equivalent of the specials that other Doctors have done. So we'd have roughly the kind of era that other Doctors have had. Certain terms of time, even if maybe not in terms of the number of episodes.
Sure. And I think that this kind of... So, if we're going to sort of pull back and look at the wider picture, what's going on that's causing all this stuff to happen? Chaos in Cardiff, again. There's always chaos in Cardiff. I mean, it's been that way since the first week of production on Rose and Aliens of London, right?
First day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So nobody sets out to have chaos. Nobody says, oh, let's have a chaotic time and let's have things going wrong and people walking away from the production because, dates have moved and such like as this. But obviously there are reasons why these things happen. And look, here's my tuppence worth. There's been a big change now. Instead of Doctor Who being made primarily for Britain, and then other people from around the world, other countries, other broadcasters come in and buy the rights to show Doctor Who. And so there's kind of a piecemeal sort of haphazard thing around the world with lots of contracts running at lots of different times for lots of different amounts of money. They've put all their eggs in one basket with a single streamer. And I think that essentially, on the face of it, that is a good idea. Because it means that you're not... So it saves all the hassle, all the time consumption, and all the wasted money of going with all these different contracts. And of course, if you're going with all these different contracts, that also means that there's a certain amount of sort of, uncertainty about the future in the air. They've gone with a single contract with somebody who's paying, presumably more than all the individual contracts, or more than the BBC would recoup from all those individual contracts once you've taken out all the sort of uncertainties and the sort of, wasted resources of organising those contracts in the first place. And given them a certain amount of certainty, but at the same time, if your eggs are all in one basket and that basket sort of topples, that means you've got no eggs left. And so, yeah, I mean, did you want to jump in before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, the factor I would say is that particularly with streamers, that there's not the money there that there used to be. They don't see it as either the tax break or just, you know, the lost leaders that they used to see some productions as. So that Disney gave them security at an uncertain time. So that, I think, would be a large part of why it's worth the gamble.
For sure. And actually, from Disney's perspective, I still think Doctor Who is a damn good bargain for them because they're getting it for way, way, way less than they would if they made it themselves. And it's also something that comes in with an inbuilt subscriber base who will be subscribing to Disney Plus for Doctor Who and for other things as well, of course. But Doctor Who will bring people and keep people there. I still think it's more likely that Disney say yes and also want to fold in the rest of the Doctor Who back catalogue because that's what really keeps people there. And I talked about this last time. Then that they walk away, but it's not impossible they walk away. But I think the problem that I'm highlighting is not whether or not Disney walk away. Because if Disney do walk away, let's say Doctor Who takes a 2-year break, which it may not. Doctor Who might go into production on a lower budget and just carry on with the idea that we'll make the episodes and then we'll sell them to someone or a bunch of other people else. Or it could be that they say, right, let's cease production on Doctor Who for just 2 years with the idea that we'll set some other contracts up in place so we know what the playing field is like, and then we'll go back into production when we know how much money we've got. Either of those things could happen. Let's face it, there was 2.5 years between Jodie Whittaker's last series and Shuji Gatwa's first. So it's not like they're not happy to take a break at the moment as things stand, just in order to make sure things are going the way they want it to. But I think the problem I'm highlighting is it's not the whether they will or whether they won't, but it's just if you want to stay in constant production and you've basically promised to have a series a year, which we all knew was a phony promise, but we didn't think it would come unstuck this quick, then you want to make sure that Disney are in a position where they tie themselves in before the second series is broadcast rather than after, because that means that you can't go into production on the third one until you know where you stand. And they're making these things way ahead of time, not way behind time. So they've accidentally engineered a situation for themselves where they have to go on a break, whether they wanted to or not.
Absolutely, but it's going to look a lesser break anyway, because as we know, there's the war between the land and the sea. Whenever that goes out, you know, whether it's planned to go out second half this year, early next year, so they can kind of cross their fingers a little and get away with the production.
Are you saying the war between the land and the sea is going to make things a bit easier in exactly the same way as Class did in 2016?
You're putting words in my mouth. I won't disagree.
I can see what you're saying, and from their perspective, that's how they'll spin it. But I don't think that's going to work for people, is it? I don't.
No, not for fans, but you can spin it to the general public.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think the general public, honestly, will care all that much, frankly.
No, and you know, breaks in production, I don't think of that uncommon, particularly because the Star Wars series, for a start off, you know, they go every couple of years. I know there's a Star Wars series or a Marvel series practically every year.
True.
They're not consecutive series.
Oh no, absolutely. The Mandalorian. Actually, The Mandalorian had 2 series that were about a year apart, and then the next one after that was 2 years later. And now there's going to be a movie, which is going to be 3 years, I think, after the third of those series. So the gaps in Mandalorian are just doubling in size pretty much, or, you know, as it goes on. And presumably, if the film's a success, there'll be another one in 4 or 5 years. Who knows? But yes, you're right. Even back in the day, you know, people always say, oh, they used to be able to make telly. Look at when Out of the Unknown came out. I can't remember which years it was, but it was something like 1964, 1965, 1968, and 1973 or something.
Quatermass.
Yeah, quite. This is not a new thing. I think people sort of delude themselves that this isn't a fairly usual thing, but it is a fairly usual thing, frankly.
Yeah, and you know, it's not like something like Call the Midwife, which does tend to get which has essentially a similar cast, similar events, and standing sets it can use. Doctor Who is an immensely complicated production compared to that.
Yes, it's way closer to the sort of Star Wars end of things. Or, like I say, the out of the unknown end of things, where you've got new cast and new sets in every episode, than it is the sort of
Yeah.
call the midwife end of things.
But then with those, you could have different production teams on the episodes.
Hmm.
You have different actors. Doctor Who has at least two characters that go through the series one way or the other.
Yeah.
And giving them a week off here and there isn't really going to cut it.
Anyway, John, that is the news. I guess one more question I'll ask before we go, and your buzzing's quite bad. So I'm going to try and keep the other 2 episodes that we're recorded in this block a little bit shorter, just so that we're not such a harassment on people's ears. And of course, I think as some people will know, that if you're listening to this, there are 2 other episodes that are coming out on the audio feed alongside this. There's going to be 3 episodes coming out together on Monday, a Doctor Who news one, an Oscars news one, and a Donald Trump news one. So take your pick, but those are the 3 things there will be. Final question before we go on the Doctor Who bit. Is it going to be a regeneration fade to black?
At the moment, yes.
It's going to have to be, isn't it?
It's going to be the same as the Jodie Whittaker one, which was filmed as a fade to black, and they didn't know what was going to be at the end of it, if there was going to be at the other end of it. So yeah,
I think the point is, though, it's going to be broadcast in what, 4 months, 5 months time at the most. I think
May time.
May 31st. We thought, according to the dates sort of that we had, May 31st. So that's 4 months time. Unless they find somebody and fill something in 4 months. And this, again, depends on Disney saying yes, I think. So there's a potentiality where they don't even start looking until after the episode we're talking about has been broadcast.
They're bound to have something in process. But again, it might depend on Disney money for what they can afford. And
yeah, exactly. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Right. So that's a bit of Doctor Who gossip and a bit of Doctor Who news. We'll be back with the Oscars, and we'll be back with Donald Trump, and we'll be back with all sorts of other things too. Until that happens, I was JR.
I was John.
And we will speak again soon. Right, for those people watching on the video call, the sound is bad, so I'm going to try and keep the other 2 to about 20 minutes each. I guess we'll see how it goes. John, ready to go in on Oscar?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll not go through absolutely everything on this, so that we can try and keep it to 20 minutes. But here we go. You're listening to Film Club Extra, and for the next 20 minutes, we are going to be talking about the 2025 Oscar nominations, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
So we just recorded a couple of reviews of a few of the films that we thought were going to be nominated for Best Picture. We usually we're not exclusive, but we try and get through the Best Picture nominations during the first few months of the year before the ceremony comes up, if we can. And lo and behold, just as one of those episodes was due to be published, the actual nominations themselves came out. The headline news, and then I'll ask you I guess we'll talk about what we think about some of the more specific categories. But the headline news is the 5 most nominated films are, in 4th place with 8 nominations apiece, A Complete Unknown, which I don't think either of us has seen yet, have we?
No.
That's James Mangold, who did the Indiana Jones film and has worked on, he's done a few other things as well, including, of course, Walk the Line. So this is his next sort of musical biopic of the very early days of Bob Dylan, with Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. Conclave also is on 8 votes. We talked about that. We reviewed it just before Christmas. And I can't remember what everybody else said, but for myself, I thought that was in with a good shout. Oh, I certainly enjoyed it a lot. We'll talk about whether it's in a good shout in a minute. On 10 nominations apiece, Wicked and The Brutalist. I've not seen either of those. Did you watch Wicked?
I have not, but I think, as I said last time, my wife and son saw it and they absolutely adored it in the cinema.
Wicked. So 10 nominations for a musical. Oscar does love a musical, and it seems to me that there's one every year in particular that stands out, that gets showered in nominations. but that doesn't necessarily always win a lot of those categories. The Brutalist, I've not seen. It's 3.5 hours. I'm not going to go to the pictures.
It's
I'm going to wait
got
till
an
it streams.
interval, for God's sake, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think that's one for streaming, definitely, rather than the pictures. But actually, 10 nominations for The Brutalist. I think that is the sort of
It's
that's
the
the
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, of the year. So that is, to a degree, the sort of traditional choice, maybe, of the films that are nominated. Well,
I think so.
not having seen it, this is obviously just going on reputation, but it seems that way.
I think it's the way it's been talking that you'd start off with Adrian Brody as the favourite for Best Actor, certainly.
Probably. We'll go through. I've got 7 categories in front of me, which I propose to go through. I don't necessarily propose to read out all the nominations. Have you got the nominations in front of you?
I have.
Yeah. So I think I'll just shout out a category, and we'll just have a conversation about who we think will win and/or is in contention, rather than going through all of the nominations. But here's the headline news: on 13 nominations, the most nominated film of the year and one of the most nominated films of all time. In fact, I'm not even entirely sure. It's not a record, but I think there might have been one year when something got 14 nominations.
Yeah, it's a record for a foreign language film.
It's Emilia Perez, which is, I think, so this is prior to the nominations coming out, I wasn't sure what I thought was necessarily in the running for Best Picture and to pick up a bunch of stuff. I think the fact that it's got 13 nominations, including, and this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but I think this is a slight tell. It's got 2 nominations in the Best Song category, whereas Wicked, for example, not Wicked, the other films, Better Man, for example,
Yes.
only has 1. And of course, there's a reason why the others only have 1. But the fact that this film has 2 suggests, whereas when, easily there could have been a 5th film with a single nomination as well, suggests to me that there was a weight of feeling behind Emilia Perez when people were voting for the nominations. So in the way it works is, in the screenplay category, the nominations are decided by only people who are part of the sort of screenplay part of the Academy. And then when it comes to actually who wins the Oscars, the entire Academy votes in those categories. So for me, it feels like for Emilia Perez to have had 13 nominations across a variety of categories, there is a lot of strength of feeling behind that film, which I think now makes it the favourite to have that strength of feeling reflected on the night, because it's not like in any of those categories, there are people who are saying, nah, Emilia Perez, not for me. In every single category, all of the voting seems to be Emilia Perez.
Yeah, and I think I'd stick by what we said on the episode. I don't think it's as extraordinary a film as you'd expect a 13 nomination Oscar film to get, but it's different enough to stand out, and it plays into certain political issues of the day as well.
Yeah, and not necessarily the ones or in the way that you think it might do. Apparently, there's been a bit of a pushback from the trans community about the film, but I'm not 100% sure that's not partly, and obviously I'm not a trans person, so I can't say whether it's a sort of a film that treats that community with the respect that it should do, but it's made with an actor in the lead role who's part of that community. So I can't imagine that they would deliberately have sort of done something to upset those people. So I just wonder if, because sometimes what happens is people go into a film knowing, the top line of what that film is about and have certain expectations about what it's due to do. But I don't think Emilia Perez is necessarily about that. I think there's 2 or 3 things going on there, and because it leans into those other areas as well, I'm not entirely sure that it maybe comes across that it's not doing the thing that people perhaps hoped it might.
yeah, I mean, this culture, it feels very distinct from the American films that are nominated here. It definitely
Well,
has
certainly
its
that, yeah.
roots in Mexican culture, as Matt pointed out. It's a French director as well. And the one thing I'm glad at is that it's Carla Sofia Gascon has the Best Actress nomination. I think it is an extraordinary performance from her.
Yeah,
Certainly.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Actually,
yeah, go on.
I was only going to say, I think it was Matt who said in our WhatsApp thread that it would be a shame if she wins and everybody says, oh, she's only won because people are sticking two fingers up to Trump. But I said, well, yeah, but she deserves it. I mean, of the performances I've seen, hers is as good as any of the others. You know, Demi Moore, in any other year, I think Demi Moore would have had a great shout, or even Mikey Madison. But I cannot say that Carla Sofia Gascon is giving a performance that's any less great than they are.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the performance I like most is Mikey Madison's. I'd love to see her.
Yeah,
Um, but yes, I think with Oscar voting, you do always take a certain amount of politics into it, and all those three performances you can say have a certain political push behind them. You know, obviously
sure.
you have the trans rights, you have the older women, and you have the sex worker thing. But the strongest, you know, the Academy loves a good story. That's its business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the real story here would be, Emilia Perez, Carlos Sofia Gascon to win that. So that's
Absolutely.
why I think she would be favourite. But I think Demi Moore, particularly as she's what would now be old Hollywood,
Yeah, in a
and it's a
way,
resurrection story again, something the Academy absolutely loves.
for sure.
So yeah,
I
I
think
think
there were two.
either could. Yeah,
Well, I was going to say, I think there are two ways this can go. If now that the elections happened, the people voting feel cowed by Trump, they'll vote for more. If they want to stick two fingers up to Trump, they'll vote Gascon. I think Gascon is odds on, frankly. But
yeah, I
if
agree.
she doesn't, it'll probably be more because there's more of a story there, I think, than Mikey Madison. And you're right. So I guess then that's Best Actress covered and probably Best Picture. I'll come back to Best Picture. Best Supporting Actress, seeing as we're on the actors. For me, I think it's going to be Ariana Grande. I would Zoe Saldana. I think her performance in Emilia Perez is absolutely phenomenal as well. But like you say, Oscar loves a story, and Ariana Grande turning up in a movie and actually being, by all accounts, and I did see a little bit of it, and the bit of it I saw, yeah, phenomenal is like, well, there's a story. And so it feels like she's the sort of fresh, unexpected face that occasionally Oscar will go, oh, wow, bang, there's your Oscar.
Yeah. See what's good because you've got again the awkward thing is we haven't seen the Brutalist, and that has a lot of acting nominations as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, of those, I do like Isabella Rossellini in Conflict, but I can't say it was one of those startling kind of performances you'd give an
She's
award for.
never, no, it's a lovely film and a lovely role for her. She's never going to win an award
No,
for it.
no, I think agree. Zoe Saldana again. I don't know her background, but she's not known as a musical actress off the top of my head. So
No, and she comes out singing
yeah, and again, Ariana Grande, not known as an actress, so it's either going to an actress who's not known
as a
for
singer
singing
or a
or a
singer.
singer who's not known as an actress.
Yes, yes. Right, John, let's try and move fairly swiftly along. Let's do, since we've just done the actresses, let's do the actors. In Best Supporting Actor, let's do that first. Kieran Culkin gets nominated for supporting, I guess because actually the sort of not the narrator, but the sort of identity character in that film is the other one whose name escapes me. The
Jesse
one.
Eisenberg.
So I think that's why Culkin is up for Best Supporting rather than Best Actor. But I think that plays into his hands actually, because I think, and yeah, like you say, we've not seen all of these other performances, so who knows? But I think that plays into his hands. A Real Pain's not really nominated for very much else. Kieran Culkin, it's a story again because it's his brother who's the sort of one who was famous as the child actor in one of the sort of most popular films of all time. For me, I think Culkin will win that. I don't
He
know.
has the Golden Globe already. I think he starts very purely on that basis. I was lucky though, because I mentioned it. Yuri Borisov get a nod for an aura, because I
don't
think
think
that's
it's
charming performance.
it is, but it's not an Oscar-winning performance, frankly. So it's nice to see the nomination.
It is a sidekick performance essentially.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really nice, but yeah.
Best actor, Adrian Brody already has an Oscar. In fact, doesn't he have two? Or am I misremembering? It's one for the pianist, isn't there?
Yes. I'm trying to think what
And did he
else.
win one for King Kong?
Did he? No.
I'm just kidding
No.
with you.
God, it's been a long week.
Ralph Fiennes, I think, gives a beautifully subtle performance for Conclave, but here's what I'm thinking. Timothy Chalamet is playing a very young Bob Dylan. Timothy Chalamet, I think, is one of the actors who's been around for a while now. He's not really done anything Oscar noteworthy. He's also in June this year, and I think June is one of the biggest kind of what happened to the nominations for that, frankly, which we'll come back to. I wonder if Chalamet might be the one that they give it to, partly for this, mostly for this, probably, and a little bit for June, and for, Adrian Brody's got one already. Ralph Fiennes, did he win one for The English Patient? He did, didn't he?
I'm trying to think.
He may have done. So if Fiennes and Brody have already got them, and the other two that are nominated in that category, yeah, I suppose either of them could. I've not seen either of the films, but they're both sort of relatively out of left field names. So,
Well, you know why Sebastian Stan has his nomination there as well. There is again partly a political dimension to that.
well, for sure. But I'm just, for me, I'm just looking at Chalamet and thinking he's the one that it seems to me I could imagine the most people voting for in that category.
Again, it's and the equivalent last year would probably be the Leonard Bernstein biopic.
Yeah, I guess so.
But again, I think Bradley Cooper was, as I said at times, overly reverent. It wasn't telling much of a story, whereas this does seem to have more of a story. It has better reviews, and they've done a soundtrack with Chalamet singing Dylan.
Oh, well, there you go. That's going to push a few buttons as well, isn't it? Plus, this is from the director of Walk the Line, and Walk the Line was so well received that
And
I
had
think,
Oscars.
and for sure, so I think a lot of goodwill sort of bleeds out from that into this as well, I think. So I don't know. For me, Chalamet in Best Actor, Culkin in Best Supporting Actor. Should we do screenplay before we get to director and picture?
Original screenplay.
Well, original screenplay. See, I suspect that this is where The Brutalist will win.
Yeah, it again, it's got that old Hollywood feel and that length is quality thing.
Sure. I would love to have seen The Substance, I think, but I think The Substance is a film that's more about the acting and the directing than it is about the screenplay. So I couldn't necessarily see that winning. Same with Anora, really. I think the screenplay is probably not, to say the least part of it, diminishes the work that's gone into the screenplay. But it's the acting and the directing that makes those films. Obviously, we've not seen The Brutalist, not out in the UK till I think it comes out like next week or something.
Yes, it does. A Real Pains could, but again, you said it's the acting again in that makes that film. It's an acting showcase rather than a compelling story, I would say, in that score.
And it's not nominated for Best Picture. I always think the screenplay awards for me seem to go either to the film that wins Best Picture or to the film that got beaten by something else to win Best Picture. Yes. And depending how Best Picture goes, I suspect Emilia Perez will win, and The Brutalist will be the one that everybody thought would. I mean, they don't say what order they came in, but I think The Brutalist is probably the nearest challenger. So I suspect the screenplay ones will go to Emilia Perez and The Brutalist. For me, that's where my money would go.
Let's see, Completely Known Conclave. Yeah, obviously, again, there's several of those we haven't seen. So,
and something like Conclave, for instance, is very well written, but it doesn't have fireworks. If you see what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't think as a script it's got necessarily anything to set the voters,
it's crafted, I would say.
Yeah, crafted rather than spectacular. I mean, it's a great film.
Yeah.
Right, best director, best picture. See, I just think, and this is the thing, you've got 10 films nominated for best picture. I don't think the film that wins best picture, even if it's one of those rare occasions where best picture and best director go to separate films, I don't think the film that wins best picture wins unless the director is at least nominated as well. I don't know if it's ever happened that a film has won best picture and the director not even been nominated. And if it has, it's got to be vanishingly rare.
Certainly not in the year where you get 10 nominations for best film.
No, so I think for me it's Emilia Perez for both, frankly. I just think
Yeah.
I just think that it's because when it comes to Oscar, there's a sort of manifest destiny sort of going on. As it gets closer to the time, I think certain films go out ahead of the pack. And just like much against my sort of better judgment, Oppenheimer did last year. I just think Emilia Perez has just pushed itself out in front of the crowd now and will just continue to move in that direction.
It has I think we say The Brutalist, I think, would probably, I think that's the one that looks like best picture for me, because it's got the appearance of best picture. It's got the the immigrant storyline as well. Again, don't underestimate that with the current political background.
For sure. I think it comes back to how much of a two fingers do you put up to Trump and how much do you just sort of step back a bit from that. And if people are feeling brave, it's Emilia Perez. And if they're feeling a little bit less brave, it's The Brutalist. And if they're feeling really not very brave at all, then we sort of end up with no films winning and no votes having been cast.
I suspect that this is going to be one of those years where the Oscars spread about a little, is not going to be able to dominate 100%.
Possibly. So are you picking Brutalist for Best Director and Best Picture? Or
see, having a look at it, I might think Emilia Perez might nick Best Director because it is one of those films where the director is getting a chance to show off. Obviously, you haven't seen The Brutalist. I don't know if it's got, but yeah, I think I'll go with Jacques Audiard for Best Director. And there's none of these. They get an Oscar for the career kind of films in there, like Scorsese got one years ago. So I think that's. Well, I would love to see Coralie Parr get one.
And I in another year I would love to have seen The Substance win Best Picture and everybody just go, what? But it's such a what kind of movie. I think in another year it could have had a real shot. I just think the way politics has gone this year just means that something like the Oscars race, whether we like to think it would be or not, I think it is going to be affected because, people are affected by the world around them and they make choices that are related to, the context of what's going on in the real world. And I just think that this year's Oscars are going to be dominated by what's going on in the real world one way or the other. And I guess I hope and I believe it's probably going to be because this is quite soon after the inauguration. It's soon enough after the inauguration that it's going to, for me, it's going to be a huge bellow of fuck you, Trump.
And even if they tell us it's not, it's going to be passed that way either. People are going to be looking for that story. It is the easy angle. We know that by now with the press, the way everyone will look at it. It's easy angle. Social media will run off with it, as we know, and that's where stories tend to be generated these days.
For sure. Right, we'll be back in a few weeks. Well, we'll be back very soon, actually, because as this goes out, our Honora review, which we recorded a fortnight ago, at least a week ago. I think it was a fortnight ago.
Yeah,
still hasn't gone out. So that's due. And we will, of course, review the other films as and when we get a chance to see them. As I say, I don't think I'll be going to the pictures for The Brutalist. I think I'll wait for that to stream.
We're getting on a bit. We need a break, guys.
Yeah. Even if there's a break built in, it's just not enough. I mean, we'll see. Maybe we will. But we'll review what we can when we can. And we'll be back in a couple of months for the results themselves. Until that happens, I was JR.
And I was John.
And we will speak again soon. So, on to the third one of the evening, and this one potentially could be the one that goes on the longest, but I'll try and make sure it doesn't, because there is a great big list of things that we could talk about, but I don't think we need to sort of like dwell on them or even necessarily mention them.
Focus a bit.
If you want the news, there's plenty of places to get the news, so we'll probably just chat about the sort of, the feels of it, I guess. So here we go. Donald Trump in 20 minutes. 25. You're listening to Private Members Club, and for the next 20 minutes, we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's first week back in the office, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
And so the question that really begs to be asked at the start of this podcast is, are we going to have to start calling the Panama Canal the Trump Canal? And what is a Trump Canal, and what kind of a smell would you expect?
Well, it's what the Gulf of America empties into.
Yeah, okay. The other way around, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so Trump's been back in the White House for a week, and he has already made America look like a Nazi state. Frankly, I think it was Lewis Goodall on the newsagents said it has been darker, bleaker, worse than he even imagined it would be. And I think, frankly, that's been my reaction to it as well. I think Trump promised to hit the ground running, said he was going to be a dictator on day one. And I kind of assumed either there would be something spectacularly weird, or else it would just be like moderately horrible and things would calm down. It's been aggressively horrible, and it continues to be so. I don't know. I think that's my takeaway from the first few days.
I think he's done exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to pardon a ton of people. He said he wanted, to go and say he was going to have Greenland. He said he wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico, and Mike McKinley has been renamed from Denali.
Trans rights.
All the equality issues have gone. Essentially, they are looking for political appointments within the civil service, which doesn't strike me as a good idea.
The amount of people who've lost their jobs or been put on indefinite suspension and things like that in the health service, they have. So in the health service, there is and I'm talking about the part of the health service that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? When you investigate and develop cures for
things.
Research, that's the word I was looking for. In the research departments of the health service, normally when there's an inauguration of a new president, they get, I read, a day's pause where everybody stops doing what they're doing, essentially, because it's one of those, research is something that is continually in flux, because you research stuff as it comes up and you do it for as long as it is necessary, and so research is constantly evolving. And the thing is, you can't stop, because if you stop, everything ceases, and then when you start up again, everything has to grind back up into gear, and sometimes that means kind of, I guess, starting things over and so on and so forth. And what I read was, normally when there's an inauguration of a new president, especially when the party changes, you are prepared for the fact that things are not going to have the same emphases afterwards. So you stop for a day and you get instruction as to how to carry on in the meantime, before the new emphases become apparent. But apparently what's happened this time is they've been told to stop everything for a fortnight, and basically what they've said is, and now we're fucked.
Hasn't Trump signed an order about, I think, to stop cancer research?
No, this is the point. He's not stopped cancer research. He's stopped all research.
Yeah.
Which means that cancer is included in that. He wanted to stop research into sort of like, I think he wanted to stop research into stuff that would help trans people with whatever issues they may have. But in doing so, he's just given a blanket stop research for everything. The cessation of research would last from the week we've just had and through the next week, and things would go back into operation in the first week of February. So they would only stop for about a fortnight. But kind of the situation that I was pointing out is a fortnight is too long, and that means that they lose. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but I'm guessing what essentially happens is you lose such a massive amount of the research you've done so far because you've had to wait too long to continue, that you basically have to restart a lot of this stuff from scratch. And so so it's not that he's stopped the research for a fortnight, it's that by doing so, he set a lot of stuff back by weeks and months.
This, I think, speaks to Trump as a person at present, and it would also tie into the essentially the blanket pardons for, the January 6th insurrection. From the story about that, it was they were going to go through the cases and see whether they were going to be let out or not. Trump got so far and just went, sod it, let them all out, I don't care. He does not have the mental bandwidth, the patience, the attention span to go through these complicated issues. So he'd go blanket,
and then everybody's out. Yeah. I think, and we've only just started talking, but I'm going to give you my takeaway, because I think the takeaway is more important than going through issue by issue. And there are 2 or 3 things that we can't help but bring up. A couple of things I want to bring up are obviously Musk, but also Zuckerberg. I want to talk about Mark Zuckerberg for a minute, but we'll come back to that. But I think my takeaway kind of is this. And you're right, he's done all the things he said he would do, but I don't think anybody quite believed he would just blanket do all the things he said he would do. And this is and so this is the point that I'm coming to, is like, he has thrown out so much stuff. And each one of those things, the first executive order he signed was to rescind, I think, 74 of Joe Biden's executive orders. He just rescinded the lot. He just basically wrote a list of all the executive orders that Biden had signed and just rescinded the lot in one, swoop of the pen. That to me is sort of symptomatic of what's happening. Instead of going through each of those and saying, what are the merits? He's just said, get rid of the lot. And everything else that he's doing, the 1,500 names in the pardons list, it's just, let's not go through on a case-by-case basis. Let's just do the lot. And I think my point is this. All of the things that he's doing, in each case, no thought has gone into it. It's just this is a big blanket thing, and it's just happened. And the reason why that bothers me, that worries me, that I think that's a problem, is not necessarily because each of those things will necessarily go through and happen. Obviously, a lot of them will, but some of them will be, questioned in court, and they'll look into the legality of it, or even sometimes they'll look into the common sense of it. But whereas they might stop a handful of them from going through, a few more they might question, they might change, or whatever. The point is, if he even gets 1 or 2 through, they're so huge. They're such a big blanket of enormous stuff. They're kind of wild. And he's not even sneaking wild things through. He's just shoving wild things through. And there's just not enough people to stop them from happening. And I think this is sort of the further point is, the last 4 years, it's been an absolute circus what's been going on with Trump. But I guess that the thing that has come out of it that was most important, and that we noticed happening, but I don't think that we realized the full significance of, is that he has changed every quarter of the judiciary, of the political system, so that they are just filled with people who will facilitate what he wants to do. And so if he's throwing all this shit at the wall, it doesn't matter if some of it doesn't stick. Enough of it's going to stick that he's going to fuck up the country and by extension the world. But then the other thing is, he's got nobody who wants to stop him from doing these things. And even if in 4 years we have another presidency and a different party, and they try and turn some of those things back, the damage is done.
Yes.
There's no guardrails. There's nobody to stop him from just going absolutely wild.
No, there was a terrific book written early days of the first Trump presidency, or halfway through, by Michael Lewis. I think it was The Fifth Risk, and it was essentially about the degradation of American infrastructure, about their governing facilities, about institutions, the agencies that were being essentially degraded by what Trump was doing. He will hand agencies to people who he wants to bestow favors on, or he goes, you can have that in lieu of whatever money I owe you.
Well, Hegseth got ratified this week, didn't he? Yesterday.
Yes.
So,
and again, unqualified. Tulsi Gabbard, I think, is due to be ratified shortly. Again, you can see that they'll put the questions in, but
if Hegseth gets through, who are they going to stop?
No, there's no one will be stopped.
No, exactly.
The only thing you can say that would stop them is the fact that these are woefully unqualified people, so they are unlikely, hopefully, to do too much damage because they don't know how to work the levers. They don't know how to run their agencies. They'll be tied up.
Maybe, but and Matt brings that up on our WhatsApp thread sometimes. He thinks the thing that's going to stop Trump doing too much damage is that there's nobody there who knows how to do too much damage. I just think that there's so much stuff flying about that the damage is going to happen. And here's my analogy. You can say until you're blue in the face, a 12-year-old who's had no training can't drive a car and can't do any damage with a car. But all you have to do is put the 12-year-old behind the wheel of the car and a bunch of people around him saying, press that button there and put your foot there. And the 12-year-old can crash the car into a wall and destroy the wall. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't need to know how the levers of power are working if there's nobody there to stop you just pulling them randomly anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking in the huge overall scale of things. We're not talking individual and lowercase, and there will be a lot of damage at that personal level, particularly because they look at the welfare budget and they don't. Again, it's a case they don't see the welfare budget as kind of responsibilities where picking people up and helping them and maybe getting them on the ladder. They see it as the same thing. Exactly, a burden on society.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of things that we could go through, and some of them are more important than others. But actually, I think the more interesting conversation is perhaps about some that sort of snuck through that people didn't necessarily seem to notice. Oh, there's a great bit of text. I would say a great bit of text, a horrifying bit of text that was sent out to a bunch of different agencies around the States. I'm assuming you've seen this. I'm not going to read out the whole thing. This is about the DEAI. Did I get that right?
Oh, is it DEI or DEU?
I think it's DEAI, isn't it?
The equality
No, DEIA, the equalities people. Yes. So they are, they've just removed all the equalities people from everything government sponsored. And in doing so, they've sent out a message that goes out to the managers, I suppose, that filters down. And it includes this. We are aware of efforts by some in government to disguise these programs, in other words, DEIA stuff, by using coded or imprecise language. In other words, they're trying to get diversity and inclusion through by not calling it diversity or inclusion. If you are aware of a change in any contract description or personal position description since November the 5th, 2024, to obscure the connection between the contract and DEIA or similar ideologies, please report all facts and circumstances within 10 days. There will be no adverse consequences for timely reporting this information. However, and this reads like something out of 1933 to me, failure to report this information within 10 days may result in adverse consequences.
Yeah, it reads exactly like that. It wants people to go into essentially a white supreme ideology.
And it wants people to whistleblow
Yeah.
on each other, or if they don't, they'll be the ones in trouble. So you have to, basically, it's Big Brother. It's giving up your friends.
And well, it's even better. It's the language, it's saying imprecise language. It's saying if you
Yeah.
even remotely suspect it, or even if someone has a grudge over it, let's face it, we've all looked at, I should have had that job, I should have gotten that job, and they can go, well, actually, it's equality's higher. I'll go and do that. I'll take it.
Here's another one that came up this week, and I can't remember the precise detail about this, so I'm going to be slightly vague about it. But the essence of what happened, and this wasn't reported, and I couldn't. And see, the reason why I'm imprecise about it is because I looked for it before we started recording and couldn't find it. But obviously it had been reported somewhere by someone, otherwise I wouldn't have heard it. But essentially, what happened was, the cases against Trump that are still ongoing, the legal cases against Trump, that, I mean, they may have sort of come to a pause, but effectively they haven't been completely abandoned as of yet. They will be, but
Well, the state level ones won't, because they can't abandon those.
As things stand, yeah. But, and this is more to do with what could happen rather than what is happening. Everybody who had, and I think this was in particular to do with the files that he took to his house, right?
Yes.
The investigators who had access to those files, an executive order was signed to remove their access. In other words, and this again goes back to 1933, Donald Trump is using executive orders to stop people from being able to question what he's doing. It's so much like 1933. It's scary.
It does seem like a kind of abuse of the president's power, and you cannot see that it's a situation that the founders envisaged. Even if you hold to the fact the Constitution is holy writ, and it should be, because how many amendments to it? There are at least 22 that I know of.
Yeah,
and probably more. It's a living, breathing document, and it's never been adjusted for the fact that some guy's going to essentially run for presidency to get out of criminal investigations.
I don't think. I don't think Trump is going to be stopped by things being against the law, because there's just nobody to stop him. So if he wants to come up with something, and you're right, several of the things that he's come up with are now being questioned, whether they actually are within the Constitution. I don't think it matters whether they're within the Constitution or not. Who's going to stop him from doing them? So if he says
he'll act too fast,
yeah, exactly, he'll make it happen.
Question me later.
Once it's happened, people can say, well, it's not lawful, and he'll say, well, it might not. He won't say. Other people will say, well, it might not be lawful, but it is now.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not just the Trump Constitution, the consequences now. It's the long-term thing, because we know American legality and their friend likes precedent. A particular Supreme Court which can act on precedent and just call that. They can, it's an erosion of democracy in the long term, because the thing was, what if someone comes along, unlike Trump, who isn't quite as self-interested and has the capacity to pay attention to stuff and knows, or can at least work out how those levers are pulled.
Yeah. Right, here's another one, John. This one's very disturbing. Harmeet Dillon has been installed as the new head of the Civil Rights Division of the sort of American Justice Department, in order to change the department's emphasis to reverse discrimination cases. So the Civil Rights Division is the part that's supposed to look after people who may have been discriminated against because of race or gender or sexuality or whatever. They've been told to stop looking after people who may have been discriminated against because of race or gender or sexuality. And they've been told to start looking after people who have been the victims of reverse discrimination. In other words, white, straight men who feel they may have lost out because they're white, straight men.
It's him playing to his perceived base anyway.
Yeah.
And it's
Frightening.
it's just it starts with the little grumbles, the little moans, doesn't it? And that's what it feeds, and it's like they're kindling it.
Exactly. Right. I did say we wouldn't go on for too long. I do want to talk a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg, because I think, and so I don't want to say Mark Zuckerberg is this shining white angel who's been cowed, because he's not. But the point with Mark Zuckerberg is, unlike Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, Zuckerberg didn't set out to become rich and powerful. He invented something for his friends to use, and it turned out the thing he'd invented was so popular that now 3 billion people use it. Now, he didn't set out with the intention of making something for 3 billion. And you can say what you like about the way he's done things since then. I think part of the way he's done things since then is because he didn't set out to be rich and famous, and he doesn't know, he doesn't know how to probably.
He's a programmer who set up a program to rate how hot women were.
Yeah,
This is not a man who's good for moral decisions,
I think at the inauguration he looked terrified, frankly.
Yeah.
I think, and although there are pictures of him smiling and laughing, of course there would be. It was like a God knows how many hours a day. He wasn't going to look terrified and not smile or laugh at all during the day. But I think he looked terrified. And I don't think necessarily that Trump has something on him, as it were. Although I suppose that's possibly the case, or the thing that Trump has on him is a threat, and we know that Trump. Trump threatened to throw him in prison, don't we?
Yeah, Trump's essentially a New York gangster or a politician. He forces the language he goes with, or transactional politics. Quid pro quo. If I give this, what are you giving me?
For sure. So most of the time, Trump throws out relatively empty threats, but actually the threat isn't the thing in itself. It's to do with what can I get by making this threat. I think that he has, I don't know. We know he threatened to throw Zuckerberg in prison. I don't think Zuckerberg probably thinks he actually would end up in prison. But also, when your platform does become as huge and as popular as Facebook has become, and as Meta in general has become, I suppose, if you've got a president with, at the moment, it seems like unlimited power, who is said to you either you come on board with what I'm doing, in as much as Zuckerberg apparently can, or I'm going to basically, I guess, remove the stuff that makes you who you are, that makes your platform what it is, or whatever. I don't know. It just seems to me that Zuckerberg, and probably Bezos as well to a degree, but probably Zuckerberg even more. Musk has got Trump in his ear, or Musk is in Trump's ear, rather. And I think Musk is pulling strings that Zuckerberg and probably Bezos have become the victim of, I guess.
And you think with Musk as well, he's running a rival social network. Of course, he wants to. If he's interested, he wants to. Any legislation that prioritize X over Facebook, say.
For sure.
Again, he'll be making money out of that.
For sure. So I think, and I'm not here to say Zuckerberg is a lovely bloke and what a shame. No, but what I am saying is, so the reason I brought this up is not so that I can defend Zuckerberg, but so that I can say this is just another example of the sort of 1993 effect. Back in 1933, it was all about getting the newspapers on side so that you could get the people to vote for you because they were being told to vote for you. To me, this feels like a huge sort of control of the media, control of the judiciary, control of politics. It's all part of a game plan.
It's about surviving for the next 4 years, essentially, in America.
Well, no, I mean, Trump is part of Trump's game plan, not to survive, but to dominate and to leave a legacy that is difficult to remove, I think.
And it already will be, because, again, you look at the Supreme Court, that they can be in position, a lot of those for up to 30 years.
Yeah.
So is stuff going to be overturned? I don't think so. And any democratic regime has an uphill battle to reverse any of these changes or to even mitigate any of these changes.
Yeah, for sure. Right, one last thing then. Musk's salute. I am so disappointed with the BBC this week. So I didn't see it at first. I didn't see it for a couple of days. I saw photographs and I heard reports. And the reports I was hearing said, well, it looked like a Nazi salute, but it probably wasn't because, it was probably just him sort of doing something slightly uncomfortable and awkward. And I was like, oh, he's accidentally done something that looks pretty nasty, but it's probably, he's not a nice bloke, but even he wouldn't go that far, would he? And then I watched it, and it is a Nazi salute. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And the BBC even now have been asked, why did you not say it was a Nazi salute? And even now the BBC is saying, well, we don't know what was in his head. You don't need to know what's in his head to describe what happened. What happened is he made a Nazi salute.
It's quite a simple way to say what's in his head, because if he had not intended to be seen that way, he would have said, it isn't, I'm sorry, I got it wrong.
Oh, yeah.
There's been no apology, no, this is what I meant. It's just, no, that was...
He said he said something about it being a Roman salute.
But that again, the fascist salute, Mussolini salute, is based on that Roman salute. That's what it means in modern times. He knows exactly what that means. He knows how that comes across.
And also, the actual specifics of what he did, the double tap on the heart before you put your hand out, is apparently the current American neo-Nazi salute, specifically. So it's a bit of an odd thing for him to specifically make the current American neo-Nazi salute by accident when he was actually intending to do the Roman one, right?
Yeah, and not deny it. If he hasn't denied it, I can't believe that it wasn't deliberate.
So the two really bad, but the two really bad things about this, one, people like the BBC being too timid to say what it is. That's bad in itself, because if the press can't stand up and say what's going on, and this, I found this with the BBC. I like the BBC and I like the impartiality.
Yes,
but impartiality does not mean saying things aren't what they are, because
the thing about you're entitled to your opinion, you're not entitled to the facts.
Yeah, there was something else this week. They said in one of the things that they were talking about, they said Trump's putting all this stuff through, which looks pretty horrible. But, X amount of people voted for him. He won the popular vote. So, what can we say? It's what they voted for. I'm like, yeah, if we're going to go with the 1933 analogy, people also voted for Hitler. That doesn't mean it wasn't the...
It's a majority like that.
But it doesn't. But what I'm saying is, just because people voted for it doesn't mean it wasn't the wrong thing to do, and doesn't mean that the result of that isn't what it is. You can still say what it is, even if people voted for it.
You can outline the likely consequences.
Yeah,
people might go, "You're Cassandra," or might not think well of you. But if it comes to pass and it's true, it's better than the boosterism of I remember Brexit. There was a guy called Daniel Hannan. He wrote a piece saying, from 2016, 2025 we'll have this all singing, all dancing. That's what they sell. That's what Trump sells. Is it will be better for you. We're off to this wonderful future where America is superior. America is the paramount country in the world again. Sea to shining sea, all that.
As long as you're still alive and you're still living in America.
Yeah, but no one at all. They never talk about the negative sides. What might be the positive? And that's why people don't trust. Fundamentally, have an issue of trust with politicians these days.
Well, the policies he's got at the moment just seem destined to throw inflation into extremes, because there's nothing he's doing that's going to make their economy a safer place. Only
tariffs are madness.
Oh, it's wild. Or 25% on Canada and Mexico starting in 6 or 7 days' time.
Yeah. And threatening Denmark as well. If he's threatened Denmark with apparently targeted tariffs, you're starting a trade war with the EU at that point. over Greenland. He just wants to throw his weight around over Greenland. You would have to be charging EU tariffs. That starts a trade war with someone who's as big as you are, essentially.
He doesn't care, though, does he? He doesn't seem to understand, I think.
And again, he would not have any kind of consequences from this.
Well, no. The other thing about Musk's salute, going back to that, because I said there were two things, and I realised that there'll be people, if anybody's still listening or watching, who want to know what the other thing was. But the other thing that's worrying about that, that's kind of distressing about that, is the fact that somebody who's that close to Trump, who's that high in the administration, even though nobody's actually voted a single thing for him, and even though he's not American anyway, really, he's from South Africa. If somebody that close to Trump, that high in the administration, in front of cameras is prepared to do that, it just shows that those guys have got no fear, no morals left.
It's about throwing the weight around. That's this first week. It's about essentially saying to the world, we are too strong for you to resist.
Exactly. Right, I've got somebody who's trying to invade me now, so I'm going to finish this before it happens, because I shut the door rather more tightly tonight, so he can't get in. He's only 10, he's not strong enough. I hope. Right, that was a few thoughts about Trump's first week back in the White House. We'll probably be back with more, God knows, too soon, not long enough. Until we do, I was JR.
And I was Jon.
And we will speak again soon. And for the sake of people who've been watching on the video, apologies for the sound quality. If you've made it this far and you're still watching now, thank you. Here he is.
He wins in the end.
Of course he does. Good night.
No.